Hello. So I want to talk to you a little bit about colour wheels. This is my book for colour exploration. And these are colour wheels with different reds and yellows. And you can see they're made using a hexagon template and splitting them up. And you can see there's lots of pencil writing on there that tells you which colour is which. These are colour wheels for something slightly different. And this is a bigger colour wheel that I've turned into a mandala. I want to just show you how you can make one of these colour wheels so that you can start experimenting with this in your watercolour journal. But one of the things I do want to talk about first is that here you can see a red, a yellow and a blue. These are what we call our primary colours. Between the red and the yellow, we've got orange, which is made by mixing red and yellow. We call it a secondary colour. Between the blue and the yellow, we've got green, which we get by mixing the blue and yellow, again a secondary colour. And then between the red and the blue, we've got purple, which we get from mixing the red and blue, again a secondary colour. Over here, you can see these what are called neutral tones. These neutral tones are made by mixing all three of the primary colours together. If you get the right ratio, you can get some interesting greys. You can also create browns in those neutral tones. So we've got our primary colours and our secondary colours. On a colour wheel, the colours that are opposite, when you put them next to each other, they really zing. And the colours that are next to a colour on the colour wheel tend to go with them quite well. And that's useful when you're working out colour schemes. Now these two colours that are opposite each other, also in watercolours and acrylics, can be used to kind of darken each other a little bit. So if I add a little bit of green to red, if I'm careful about how I do it, I won't get a brown straight away. What I will get is a slightly shadowy red, a slightly more deeper toned red. Or if I add a little bit of red to green, if I do it carefully and don't add too much of one and get the balance right, I can create a shadowy green. Knowing this is really useful if you want to create shadows or shadow tones or add shadowing to your work. So I'm going to show you how to make one of those little hexagon colour wheels. Pop my book out of the way, and I'm going to grab a smaller piece of paper, and I'm going to need a pencil and a ruler and a hexagon template. Now I've got a quilting template that my mum gave me. Okay, so what I want to show you how to do is how to make a simple watercolour colour wheel. And we're going to use a hexagon shape as our basis, because that will give us 6 segments, which will allow us to do the 3 primary colours and 3 secondary colours made by mixing them. So we draw around a hexagon template, and you can use any hexagon template you like. And then we join from the opposite points to create our 6 triangular sections. So you can see I've got 2 here. This is going to be some kind of a red, this is going to be some kind of a blue, and this is going to be some kind of a yellow. And then here is going to go the colour we get from mixing yellow and blue, which will be a green, and in here will be the mix of red and blue, which is purple, and over here the mix of yellow and red, which is orange. Now I would write the exact paint colours on there so that I've got a really good record of what it is that I am getting from different paint colour mixes. So I'm just going to grab a palette and pop that so you can see it. And I'm going to grab just a number 5 spotter. I'm going to pick a yellow. For the demonstration, it doesn't really matter what yellow, and I'm going to make that fairly watery. I don't want too much water on my brush because I want to get a nice flat wash that doesn't have any kind of extra water on, and it's just nicely filling the space without being too watery. If I get bits that have pools of water, I get essentially watermarks that can be made in there, and that's fine for some things, but for this I want to be able to see the colour quite well. So I'm just aiming to get a nice even tone. I'm going to take just one of my blues and I'm going to pop that there. This one's a blue that I quite like, it's a phthalo blue. I'm kind of looking and thinking it might be green shade. And again, not too much water on my brush, working quickly enough that the paint doesn't dry, because that will give me kind of a hard line. And it's okay if I'm not exact with my edging, because I just want the main colour. And giving that a good clean off, and then I'm going to pick a red, and I'm going to go for this red here. It's quite an intense colour, so I'm just going to make sure that's watery. And again, taking the excess water off my brush. And I'm working again quickly so that it doesn't dry. Now I can see a little bit that for whatever reason the sizing on this isn't as evenly distributed as it might be, and I was getting little patches, so I'm just working over that a little bit with my brush. Okay, so then I've got my primary colours, my yellow, my red and my blue. In here I'm going to take some of the blue and pop it in there. Clean my brush off really well because I don't want any blue to remain. I'm just drying that on a little rag I've got, so I'm picking up lots of the yellow and not lots of water, and I mix that in there, and I can see a green already, but I would like to add a little bit more yellow to that so I can really get an idea of that green tone. And I'll pop that in here, and this is a green that reminds me a little bit of Viridian, but not quite as bright. Definitely a foresty kind of green. And I'll pop that in there. I'm going to use the same kind of idea with the red and the blue to make my purple. So I'm picking the red up. I don't want to waste the paint, so I'm taking off the excess, cleaning it really well, patting it, just pressing it onto a cloth, so I'm taking off the excess water and then mixing that in there. You can see I've got a very blue kind of purple there. Really it's more of a blue, so I need to add a touch more red to that. There we go, there's a kind of muted purpley tone. Get that on. And then the last one is to add some red to the yellow. And I'm just going to pop that straight into my yellow there and see kind of what I get. I'm actually going to pick up another little touch of yellow and pop that in there to make a more intense colour. I find sometimes that when I'm making the orange I need a bigger amount of that yellow pigment to kind of get a good orange. There we go, and we can see the orange that we're making. Now if you imagine that in your palette, have a think about how many reds you've got, how many yellows you've got, how many blues you've got. Normally in a palette you'd have a warm red and a cool red, a warm blue and a cool blue, and a warm yellow and a cool yellow. So you'd have 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues that are tonally a bit different. So you'd then have a range of greens that you could make using those yellows and those blues in different combinations, and the same with your purples and your oranges. Now on the colour wheel, this side here, the orange, the red and the yellow, these 3 are what we call the warm colours, and these 3 over here are what we call cool colours. We've obviously got our primary colours, and then we've got our green, orange and purple as secondary colours. These colours that are opposite each other's, when you put next to each other, they kind of make them zing and pop. But also, if you mix those together, so if I take a little bit of that red, I'm just going to intensify a little bit here, and I add to that a little bit of red there, and I add some of the green, you can see that with a little bit of careful adjusting, there's the red with a touch of green, there's the red just as it is. If I add even a little bit more red there, you can actually see it kind of gives a slightly shadowy tone. And you can get the same thing with the blue and the orange. Now if you have quite a bit of those secondary colours, you'll mix them and you'll get a brown or a green, kind of eventually going to brown. But if you look at that, that's the blue with a touch of orange. It's got a little bit too much because it's gone quite green. Put some more blue in there. It's still blue, but it's not the blue that we started with. Look, you see it's kind of a little bit dulled down, and that is how you can mix shadow tones. So use the colour that's opposite on the colour wheel. So blue with a touch of orange or with a touch of yellow and a touch of red in the right amounts will create a shadow tone. Now these colours that are next to each other, like green and yellow and green and blue, they work really well together. And this is a way that you can kind of pick colours that complement each other and colours that will make each other pop. If I mix all of those together, so if I literally kind of go along and start putting a little bit of everything in, I can get a range of different neutral tones depending on what colours I'm mixing and in what proportions. Now you can see in this one here where I've got a little bit of red and yellow and blue, I've actually got quite a nice kind of steely grey colour. And this is one of the ways that you can find some really lovely greys and neutrals. If you look at this one here, a really lovely kind of, this is still a little bit purpley, and a touch more kind of yellow. See that lovely brown you've got there, so another neutral. If you start just mixing these in different proportions, you again can get, this is like a warmer grey. So if I add some more blue bits to that, I'm going to get a different colour again. Lots of really lovely neutrally tones. A little bit of red there, a bit more red, and I'm going to push it going towards kind of purples or browns depending on the proportion of the other colours. You can see this lovely range of neutral tones that you can get from just those three primary colours. And so that's the last thing I will do with my colour wheel, is I'll mix some different neutrals to show how I get them. If there's one I particularly like, I will get those three primary colours out again, and I will kind of make a colour sum, if you like, and go, well, it's 2 bits of blue to a tiny dot of yellow and red, and I will jot that down as a little note. These are really good to refer back to and look at and go, I want a really zingy kind of orange. How do I mix that with my palette of colours? They're great if you want a small palette, but they're really good for just getting to know your colours. So I have, in my big book, lots and lots of these colour wheels. The other thing you can do with these is actually, you can get your selection of reds, blues, yellows, and you can kind of start giving each of them a little bit of a triangle. Sometimes you might need to split these down again into half if you've got quite a few colours. And you would label each one of these so you can see which is what, and kind of go, I really love that particular yellow. That's how that yellow looks, kind of a middle creamy mix. You can actually see some of my yellows are quite similar. These are two yellows that really are quite like a lemon yellow. This one kind of starts to get warmer. And this one is quite a bit warmer. And when we're saying a warm and cool yellow, it means that kind of it tips a little bit more towards a warmer version of a yellow or a cooler version of a yellow. This is one of my favourite kind of yellows. I think this is nickel azo yellow, and it's quite transparent. It's got quite a warm tone. And you can see there's a lot of similarity in my yellows. This is also a yellow. I'm just going to paint it here so you can see it. It's an Indian yellow. It's very warm. It's kind of an orangey tone to me. You can use this to get to know them. If you want to know and you're not sure about whether your blue or yellow or red is a warm or cool tone. So remember, yellows are all warm colours on the colour wheel, but individual yellow paints and yellow pigments can be a cool yellow, like say this one is quite cool and almost kind of has a greeny tinge to it, as opposed to this one that's very warm and kind of has a little bit of a reddish tinge to it. If you want to find those out, there are lots and lots of websites where you can look that up. One of my favourite is an artist called Jane Blundell, and she has a blog. And I'll make sure I pop the link in so that you can go and find that out for the exact paints that you've got. And that is everything that I do with little colour wheels. So another little exercise that you can do with your paints, and it actually looks really pretty when you get a page of them, especially if you put some fine line work on them or just some simple outlining. Remember, you want to be able to see the colours, and it doesn't always have to look like a, you know, really pretty finished, for want of a better word, page. I really like the look of this kind of thing in my colour book, so I can go and look in there and find out what colour combination I'm really looking for on a particular day with a particular piece. I'll see you in the next video.